Hi, I'm Sean,
Hi, and I'm Shannon.
and we're the host of Wifey and Baby Mama. We want to thank you all for joining us again for this week's episode titled Papa Was a Rolling Stone. I know we've spoiled you guys with the guests the last 2 weeks, but
Yes.
tonight, Shannon and I are solo. Fortunately, we don't know any Rolling Stone papas well enough to ask them to come on. I mean, I know there are a few out there, but everyone close to us, thankfully, as far as we know, are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I mean, I guess I could have asked one of my daughter's fathers, but I don't think that would be messy. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously, we didn't have anyone to bring on. And like I said, that's actually a good thing. So tonight, uh, we're gonna let the sense of humor be back in control, but it's all love. We're
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
just okay with having a guest, not having a guest for this episode. And I mean
Right.
that
Right.
makes us proud that everyone we know is living right.
Or we're not
But
gonna rat you out.
that's right. But by all means, we know it's a lifestyle nonetheless. So we thought it was necessary to discuss this topic as we do most of our topics. Anything we can do, to help to shed some light on things. As we did our episode of what happened to the grandmothers on last week, we discussed how time has changed and the roles of grandmothers have too. And Shannon and I always look at both sides of our topic. So hence today's episode. We'll touch on how the roles of the heads of the families differ these days so much from the days of old. The title kind of reflects how many families operated back in the day, whether some of us want to admit it or not. Papa, which can be either the dad or grandfathers, were
Mhm.
the providers. And for the most part, the wives stayed home, they kept the house. Now, so many have, not some have worked a job. Some of the wives have worked a job. Now, many of the women are out working, but still, the bulk of the
Right.
finances, back in the day were held down by the men. Back
Mhm.
when we were growing up, and more often than
Yep.
not, that mean they made the rules as well, which
Mhm.
often didn't apply to them. I mean, I know plenty of granddads that had women lined up, and I often thought, now, where the other women husbands at? Shannon, remember
Uh-huh.
that song, Who's
Right.
Making Love to Your Old Lady while
Right.
you out making love? Now that's too
Yep.
old for some of y'all young people, but go look it up. Those are my aunties
Right.
and mamas song
Right.
back in the day, but y'all go look it up.
Yeah.
Honey, these
Yeah.
young people are having a hard time getting it together because of those
Mhm.
kind of things. Not only did the
Yeah.
times change, so did the music.
Yeah.
These people
Yeah.
don't sing about anything these days but sex, lies, money, and drugs. I mean, think about it. And what does the world
Right.
idolize now?
Right.
What do the world idolize now, right? Mostly
Exactly what
sinful
you
things.
said. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
And
yeah.
our grandmothers and mothers' music, it had staying power. And that's
Yeah,
why
it did.
marriages and
It
families
did.
outlasted bad times. Now,
Mhm.
I can say it was
Mhm.
some stuff going on that not even music could have made me understand. Because you wasn't about to
Right.
beat
Right.
me or my children. And honey, you gonna cheat
Yeah.
on me, but you ain't gonna do it in my
Yeah.
face.
Yeah. Yeah. But just like I mentioned last week about how my grandmothers were polar opposites, my grandfathers were too. So,
Okay.
I had that Rolling Stone
Yeah.
one. And
I did too,
and
but it was like Tanya on last week. Both of mine were Rolling Stones on both sides. But go ahead.
oh.
Yeah, I had both of them were Rolling Stones, honey. Both of my grandfathers.
Yeah, yeah, and it was, like you said, in those times, it was accepted.
Yes.
No one did anything. It wasn't even talked about. There wasn't nothing to gossip about.
Right.
It
It was like
was
almost a
common.
norm. Yeah.
Yes, yes, and
But
I'm glad. I'm so glad and thankful we've gotten away from that,
a
way
little
of
bit.
thinking. Well,
as it,
yeah,
as it being the norm, you're right.
right,
Cause
right,
like
right.
yeah, like I said, it ain't. I mean, like I said, music was good. It had staying power, but it ain't enough music, like I said, to allow you to be cheating on me in my face.
Yes, right.
Now, now, don't get me wrong. I know any good thing is gonna come with some challenges. That's just with any relationship worth having. But I guess like with anything else too, God knew which women were built for that era, honey. Cause count me out, okay, on the old school list. I'm gonna
Yeah,
get back
me
with you, and
too.
that's a fact, Jack. So, thank you, Lord, for saving me for
Right.
this area and keeping me. What
Yeah,
it say? Keeping me for such a time as this, cause I wouldn't have lasted.
right.
you know. But like you said, it was like
Yeah,
almost
yeah.
acceptable for men to step out as
Mhm,
long as they fed the
mhm.
family, right? I mean, my
Right,
own
right.
grandfather would go out, get drunk as all get out, come home when he felt like it, if he came at home, like
Mhm.
it came home at all,
Mhm.
request a hot meal, and I watched my grandmother do exactly as told without exchanging a word. I said, the devil. In this day
Yeah.
and age,
Yeah.
I couldn't have
Yeah.
sustained that. And I
Right.
had a friend whose husband
Mhm.
who constantly ran around on her, right? So she asked
Mhm.
him one day why he cheated on her so much. She was well educated, beautiful, successful. She cooked, kept a clean, beautiful house. She just
Mhm.
wanted to know why. And his response was, I watched my grandfather and father cheat. So I thought that's what men do.
Ah.
Girl, I was
Mm.
speechless. Like he had to actually go to counseling because it was embedded in him. It's like what we talked about
Mhm.
last week. It was a learned behavior.
Mhm.
Not that it
Yeah.
was right, but it was a learned behavior.
Right. Right.
And
It
thank God they
just
worked through
becomes
it. They're
normal.
happy. Yeah, their
Mhm.
marriage is healthy. But until she addressed
Oh,
that, it was just an issue for
yeah.
years on end.
Mhm.
But I mean,
Mhm.
when you think
But
about it though, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say back to uh women not doing anything. Now that I think back,
Hmm.
my father had a best friend, and when they were in their 20s, his best friend was cheating on his, I don't know if it was wife or girlfriend at the
Hmm.
time, and she actually killed him.
Oh, well, I've
Yeah.
heard that story a few times, and
Yes.
and you
Yeah,
know what?
and
I've
then
seen people get away with it too. They
yeah,
call
and
it
people
crimes
get
of
away with it.
passion.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. And then even look at, your famous story of Al Green with the grits. So
Lorena
there
Bobbitt.
were yeah, there, she was a lot later, but yes.
But yeah, but
Yeah,
still,
no,
I
she was
mean,
the
she
most
was out.
gangster.
Yeah, she wasn't built for this era. She was in the
No.
wrong era, so she dealt with it in her way. She wasn't built for
Right,
that
right.
era. Yeah, she was in the wrong era. She wasn't going for
Yes.
it.
No.
But I mean,
But
but go ahead.
no, no, no. I was just saying, yeah, there are some exceptions, like we say every week. There are always going to be some exceptions,
Yes,
even
but
even to the old school.
even to the old school.
Yeah.
That's why the grits was getting thrown. But it's a thin line between love and hate. You remember that song? Like
Yeah.
that's when music was music.
Yeah.
And if you listen to
Yeah.
it, I'm saying,
Yeah.
like I said, it don't make it right. It doesn't make it right.
Doesn't
But
make
if
it
you listen
right.
to it, you understand, it's a thin
Mhm.
line. But just
Yeah.
like I said, a little bit earlier, that behavior mostly was taught, right? So just the
Right.
same as good behavior, it's taught. But what we can't
Mhm.
change the time, right? Or fix the way things used to be. But fellas, we need to be better at being father and just men,
Mhm.
and fathers
Mhm.
and just men altogether. The excuse
Mhm.
of, that's what I was taught or that's how I was raised is not going to save our children or keep our families together. And if I
Right.
may say, the biggest audacity to me is wanting to use the old days as an excuse to fall short. You're not
Right.
even holding it down like the Rolling Stones papas, okay?
Mhm.
At least they were paying the bills, you know what I'm saying? And keeping the house and keeping food on the table. They don't want to work, watch the
Nope.
kids, girl, take them to school, nothing.
Nope.
But then hollering about
Nothing.
respect and loyalty. I'm gonna need y'all to take
Mhm.
several seats on that. You can't have it
Mhm.
both ways, you know?
No, you cannot. Not at
And
all.
even if you are doing all those things I mentioned, Shannon, respect still goes both ways. I don't care what you're paying for, or how many shoes or purses you buy, I mean, how many groceries you buy. I still need the same respect that I give to you,
Right. Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna play with it. I'm not gonna dance around it. That's just the way it has to be.
Yeah.
And when I said on both sides of my family's father being Rolling Stones, I still watched my father be a good father, even though his father wasn't a
Mhm.
good husband
Mhm.
to his wife, which was my father's mom. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, being a little girl, I can't tell you if daddy was a Rolling Stone. I mean, I think I do remember a few girlfriends that used to be neighbors that my mom used to be like, something about that ain't right. I mean, as a little girl, you wasn't in the business like girl
Right.
like these kids
Right.
these
Right.
days. Children are too involved in adult business these days. Back then,
Yeah.
it was sit down, be
Mm.
quiet, go in the other room, go outside and
Mhm.
play. It wasn't you
Mhm.
wasn't allowed to sit up and know the business and engage in conversations.
Mhm.
I think it's way too much of that going on these days.
Yeah.
But
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not going to sit here and paint my father as perfect. But when it came to providing, no question.
Mhm.
My grandfather would get paid, use all his money up getting drunk, and then my grandmother would go work two, three jobs to keep the food on the table. But she
Mhm.
still fixed those meals. She still allowed him
Wow.
to beat her down. And I remember one Sunday her wanting to
Mm.
go to church, and he literally just walked in the house. And we were up at my grandmother's house. Like I said, my mother used to drop us off often, volunteer or
Mhm.
involuntary. She was bringing us, and we were getting ready for church. And he walked in, girl, drunk as I don't know what. And he said, you can't go to church. I'm hungry. And she said, I got to go to church. My grandmother was on like the usher board. My grandmother was like in the choir. My grandmother did everything at the church. You know how the old school grandmothers were. They
Yeah,
were
oh
very
yeah. Oh
involved in
yeah.
the church. And she
Very.
said, yeah, it's my Sunday to do this, that, the third. I don't remember exactly. And he says, well, not today. And she said, I'm going. And she went to walk past him and he smacked her so hard that I saw blood come
Oh.
from her lip. And I
Oh
was in shock,
wow.
like, oh my God. She cleaned her lip up, went in and took off her church clothes, told us we was not going to church, and went in
Mm.
and fixed him something to eat. Baby, I ain't built like that.
Oh my goodness. No, no.
I'm
I'm
not
not built
built
like that.
like
Not
that.
not at all.
You
Not at
know what I'm
all.
saying? So again, I didn't tell that story just to
Mhm.
out my grandfather. I love my
Right,
grandfather.
right.
That's
Yeah.
who he was. I said it to
Mhm.
say it did not stop my father from becoming the man that he was to me
Mhm.
and his children and all the other children that my mom had that were not even his. He literally took
Mhm.
care of all of us, you know, because that's just kind of man he was. Thus, that's what kind of man my brother is. So my father didn't learn his father's behavior as far as beating women. My father was so subtle and so kind.
Mhm.
I can't even remember
Oh.
him raising his voice maybe twice, I think. And that's
Mhm.
probably at
Yeah.
me. But for the most part, because I was so bad. But for the most part, he was just a real quiet, he was a gentle giant. And
Yeah. Yeah.
the opposite side, my mother's father, he died when I was really young. So I don't have a lot of memories with him. But I do remember him being a very bad alcoholic. And I do remember him staying out the liquor houses and gambling houses and my grandmother going behind him and, going to get him. I mean, I just
Yeah.
watched all that. Yet my
Yeah.
uncle, his son, grew up to be a preacher. He grew up to be a man of the cloth.
See? Yeah.
So we don't always have to adapt these bad behavior, but more often
Right,
than not,
right.
though, Shannon, it is it
Mhm.
is it is mimicked. And
Mhm.
so that's
Yeah.
why it's so important, men, to not be Rolling Stones. That's why it's so
Right.
important to teach your sons what you need to be, what you
Mhm.
would want them to be. Because what's the
Right.
saying? My mom used to tell us, do as I
Well,
say, not as I do.
n not
You
as
ever
I
heard that?
do. Oh,
But
yeah.
how often is that reversed? Kids are for the
Right.
most part going to do what they see.
They're gonna do what they see. And
They're
then
going to do what
also
they see.
too right, and then also fathers and mothers, we have to stop high-fiving the boys for, being with as many chicks as he can get with, and then looking down on the girls if she's trying to get with every dude she can get with. Nobody should be trying to get with as many people as they could get with. Stop it all.
Absolutely. That's
Both
right. That's
sides.
right.
Nobody gets a high five. Nobody
On
gets a put
on
down.
being a Rolling
Just
Stone.
stop. Right.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Or a
So,
streetwalker, as they called them back in the day. But
uh,
I I will say, if you're done, are you done on that point, honey?
oh
I'm sorry, I
yeah,
didn't
oh
want to cut
yeah.
you off.
Uh-huh. Mhm.
And in my wrap up, we're gonna go into, actually we have a really good red line tonight, and it's like a few parts to it. So I'm gonna wrap up a little early tonight so we can get to it because I want to have time to dig into that. Is that okay?
Oh,
But I'll wrap up,
right.
with this. We are women, and we don't know what it feels like to be a man.
Mhm.
We don't know what it feels like to carry the weight of a man. But I do know how it feels to be treated good and bad by a man. You know, I also know that a Rolling Stone mentality, while accepted back in the day, is not conducive to producing loving,
Mhm.
respectable families today, which is what we're aiming to do here in the podcast. Try to build healthier
Right.
families. If your
Right.
wife or children don't express it, how your treatment is making her feel, your wife will eventually resent you. And maybe so will your kids. But even worse than the resentment is your son growing up to repeat your actions or your daughter growing up to accept it from another man. So I implore you today, guys, break the cycle. And
Perfect.
now I'm going to move into my red line.
All right, on to the red lines.
This week's red line topic is from our July WBM Red Line winner of the month. Her name is
Okay.
Trisha J. I ain't gonna call whole names, you know, out
Oh,
no.
all
But this submission
right.
comes in from Trisha J. And Trisha writes, "My husband and his baby mama are too friendly." And she stressed the two, always talking about, and I quote, "remember when type of shit," end quote. She goes on to ask, "is this appropriate? Should I be concerned? Should I say something to him or her?"
Mm,
Okay, now
mm,
Trisha is clearly
mhm,
over it. So let's start with that. And depending on the content, I can see how she arrived at her frustration. So
mhm.
tonight, like I said, we're going to do things a little different, which is why we dialogue just a little shorter tonight. Instead of just
Mhm,
rattling off my response, I'm going to
mm,
address each of her questions separately. So I don't miss anything because
okay.
while we like to make the episodes light, have a little fun, our main priority is helping and healing, especially on these red line submissions. We're not asking you to send them in so we can
Right,
tell your business. We're asking you to send
right.
them in to give you advice to hopefully make it better and end things as peacefully as possible. Resolve things, I should say, as
Mhm,
quickly as possible
mhm.
and as easily. So, that our families can stay together and everyone can coexist in peace. That's our goal here. And we as
That's
adults
right.
need to keep in mind arriving at peace isn't necessarily important for us sometimes. I mean, I can do with or without people at a certain age. As for me, girl, long as me, my husband, and kids are good, anybody else want to
Yeah.
act a fool,
Oh,
I
yeah.
have no problem letting them act a fool. Okay,
You
y'all
got
don't
that
exist to me
right.
anymore. That's just the age I'm at. But it's imperative though when you have a blend of children, and parents
Mhm,
or step parents, to try to keep things peaceful, on their
mhm,
part. So as long as everyone is willing to do their work, I think it can all work out. So with that,
mhm,
Shannon, I'm gonna read a
mhm,
couple of points and you can jump in if you
mhm.
feel like it. We can use a little yin and yang here.
All right.
So her first question
Okay.
was, is this appropriate? To that, I say it depends on the content. For example,
Mhm.
my ex-husband and I worked alongside each other in prison for almost 8 years, right? And we had an interesting work day most of the time, and an interesting staff too. So it made for some crazy stuff going on. And I remember he called me during the Black Lives Matters riot, and was like, "You remember that night when we almost, the prison almost jumped off and we didn't know if we were going to make it out alive." He said, "Watching all this stuff on TV makes me realize how blessed we are today." You know, and I said,
Oh.
"You're right." He said, "You guys good?" I said, "I'm good. How's Jimmy?" "Jimmy's good." I said, "How's you and your wife?" He said, "We're doing fine. Just trying to make sure everybody's safe." Or he may randomly call me and be like, "You remember such and such that
Mhm.
worked in intake with us? They passed today. And I didn't know, you probably didn't know that."
Mm.
And I'm
Mm.
like, "I'm sorry to hear that. And Jim was like, "Well, who was that?" And I would say it was my ex-husband and such a thing. So, "Oh, and I'm sorry to hear that." Because that's the kind of relationship we all have. Just like
Mhm.
you, Shannon, I, with all of
Mhm.
your husband. That's the kind of relationship we
Right.
have. Now,
Right. Yep.
I gave those two totally opposite examples because if you're married to someone and we share a child, even if you were not married and you share a child, I'm sure it's things you're going to remember when, right? You're
Yeah.
going to have
Yep.
remember when times. I've
Yep.
expressed that
Yep.
on numerous shows. It's okay to keep a
Mhm.
healthy,
Mhm.
respectful tie to your
Mhm.
child's parent. You should. But
Mhm.
respect is the key word in that. So,
Right.
in my opinion, it depends on what we're remembering and how often you're remembering. Don't call me
Mhm.
every day with a
Mhm.
remember when moment.
Yeah.
And what do
Yeah.
you say to that, Shannon?
And it's yeah, I agree. It's not I remember when we, were on our honeymoon in Jamaica and whatever. I remember
Exactly.
yeah, I don't want to hear
Or
none of that.
my ex-husband calls and says, every time I look at our daughter, I remember the night she was conceived. Do you think my husband gonna be okay with that call? You know what I'm
No.
saying? Gonna go a whole
Right,
different way,
right.
right? But again, I think it depends on the content.
Yes.
So you're right. You're exactly right. Okay, so the second question was, should I be concerned? That depends on the trust you have in your marriage. I speak from experience when I say men are slow to pick up on women's and their antics sometimes. We
Mhm.
all know that. As women, we know we slick, and as men, you should know if you out there player, you should know the antics of a woman.
Mhm.
Or even if
Mhm.
you're not a player, common sense should tell you
Mhm.
if this is appropriate conversation or not if I'm a married man.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
Right,
And
right.
sometimes men know exactly what's going on and they may not have any feelings for the ex, but the macho in them still wants to know she still
Yeah.
wants me.
She
you know.
said, "Yep, yep."
But that and they may have no feelings in return, and that can be dangerous though, because even if he has
Mhm.
no feelings and he knows he won't act on it, her behavior still needs to be checked if it's
Mhm.
inappropriate, you know. And
Right,
strife
right.
gives the devil a foothold into your marriage, and that can lead to
Yeah.
many other problems. And it doesn't even have to be sexual. So again, it
Mhm.
depends on the contents of the remember when, if you should be concerned. And I think that's something that you got to personally deal with, because each we can give 1,000 scenarios here, right, Shannon? But
Right. And two, if she's addressed it with him and he's still doing it, you
right,
know?
which is the next question. So her third question, Shannon, was, should I say something about it? And I
Oh,
say
so
to
she
that,
hasn't said anything.
yep,
Okay.
absolutely, you should. You should bring it to his
Mhm.
attention, but do it with love. And this is your
Mhm.
basis to actually two things, right? This is actually your basis to your first two questions as well. If his response is sweetheart, baby, Trish, whatever he calls you, you ain't got to worry about that. That's nothing to worry about. But if it bothers you, I'll tone it down or I'll speak to her, whatever.
Mhm.
Then
Mhm.
you have to let him handle it as a man. I think that's the first step. If he's angry or defensive, then it might be a cause for some concern. And not necessarily, like I
Mm.
said, sexual. Sometimes it could just be a macho thing. But whatever it is, you got to find that underlying cause. And let me give you an example.
Mhm.
For me, Shannon, my hubby and I, when we were getting back together the second time we were dating, he was seeing a couple of three, four side chicks, because you know how baby daddy
Mhm.
rolled back in the day. So once we got together and decided we were getting married, now we're done. This one ex duck of his would not go away. I mean, she called him about in and everything, from a fly on her wall to this light bulb blinked out. You should have saw it. It was crazy.
Mm.
I'm like, look, dude, I understand. You wanting to feel understand you wanting to feel like helpful, and my husband has a
Mhm.
problem with detachment and hurting
Mhm.
people's feelings, right?
Mhm.
I just don't
Mhm.
want to, they help
Mhm.
me out. I just don't want to be that kind of person. I say I get it.
Right.
And
Right.
but women are going to feed on that because
Right.
they know your spirit. Now I'm asking you as your
Mm.
wife to deal with it, because I'm telling you she got something else going on. This went
Mhm.
on. It got so bad, and Trish, this is what I'm trying to get to. That's why you need to say something as soon as possible. So I said, I tell you what, if you feel so bad that she can't call you and it just hurts your feelings that you can't be her friend, go be her friend. I'm gonna find me another husband. He got her off his phone so quick. It had to get to that point, because we had that conversation,
Right.
Shannon, about 20 to
Mhm.
30 times.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
understand what I'm saying?
Okay.
At this point,
Yeah.
okay, either she's slow or you
Mm.
slow, but either way, I can't stay right
Mhm.
here. I
Mhm.
can't be in it.
Mhm.
And when I
Mhm.
put it to him that way, because sometimes you got to put it
Mhm.
to him that way, situation resolved immediately. But guess
Mhm.
what? And all that story, guess what that was, Shannon? He said that he knew that was bothering me. He still hadn't forgiven me for something I did in our previous relationship. And he was allowing that to go on to hurt
Oh.
me because he saw how bad it was bothering
Oh.
me.
Mhm.
So it was nothing
Okay.
sexual in that case. You get what I'm saying?
Okay.
So sometimes it's not what we
Yeah.
think. So I said
Yeah.
all that to say this: find out what the root cause is. If
Mhm.
she on some other stuff
Mhm.
and if he's too nice to tell her, or
Mhm.
maybe they just don't realize they're being too friendly.
Mhm.
It could be as simple
Mhm.
as that. So
Right.
absolutely you should say
Right.
something, sweetheart, before it gets too
Yep.
far.
Yep. Yeah, don't let it fester.
Nope.
All right.
And you got anything else to add to it, Shannon?
Nope, that
Well,
was
there you
excellent.
go. That's Trisha's red line submission. Thank you, Trisha. And Shannon,
All
what did
right.
she win?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Trisha, oh yeah, I'm gonna keep your money. No,
Yeah.
Trisha, Trisha, you are the winner of the $100 gift card. It is
Yes.
heading your way. Congratulations. Thank you so much for submitting your red line.
Thank you,
And
Trisha.
yes, we look forward to additional submissions. So please, if you would like to win a $100 gift card, please submit your red line to wifey and baby mama at gmail.com. And if your submission is chosen on the third Thursday of the month, you will win a $100 gift card. The third Thursday of the month is when we will announce and read the red line winner. So please submit wifey and baby mama at gmail.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
All
Trisha.
right. Yes. Thanks, Trisha. On to our final segment, the segment we like to call the fictional family I'm feeling. So, the fictional family I'm feeling tonight is the Johnson family. And the Johnson family I'm talking about is Celie and Mr. from The Color Purple. And the particular scene that gets me is the scene where Mister's mistress, Shug, is visiting. She's upstairs in the bed in the morning, and Mister decides he's going to cook her breakfast. And meanwhile, he's married to Celie. For those of you who have not seen The Color Purple,
You'll
so
lose your black card if you haven't, but go ahead.
yeah.
I'm
Oh yeah.
snatching them
Well.
all month of July. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, Ray and I still gotta get ours, but anyway, but at least seen The Color Purple. Um, so you got the mistress upstairs, you have uh Celie, the wife downstairs, and Mister in the kitchen. And Celie's eyes are big like saucers, looking at this man who never lifts a finger in the house to do a thing. So it's his first time in a kitchen in his life. And he's so excited. He's just full of, excitement because he's cooking for this woman that he just worships the ground she walks on. Oh, he's just like running around, making a mess, doesn't know how to turn the stove on, cuts himself, burns himself, can't get the fire hot in the oven. Celie goes and pulls a chair, a rocking chair up and sits down, like with her hands on her, under her chin, like, "Ooh, I'm gonna watch this." And like I could imagine if she only had some popcorn,
Popcorn,
she
right?
was yeah, she's like, "Whoa, look at what he got going on." And so he's doing all of this and he can't get the fire hot and he's just yelling at her and she's just looking at him like, "What?" And he's like, "Oh, I could figure out how to get it hot." And so he walks out of the kitchen and comes back in with this big old thing of gasoline. Next thing you see is the rocking chair is empty because she's taken off running. Celia is gone. And then you hear a big boom, an explosion. And then the next thing you see this burnt up, smoking hot plate of food that he's
Still on
taken up,
fire.
still on fire, taken up to his mistress. And of course, Shug takes the tray and throws it at his head and, cusses him out or whatever. She doesn't want it. And therefore, he gets what he deserves because he shouldn't have been, first of all, shouldn't have had his mistress upstairs in the house. And he shouldn't have been doing what he knew he shouldn't be doing, which
Cooking
is,
for
of
a
course,
woman and haven't cooked for his kids.
right,
Never cook for your own
exactly.
children.
Never cook for your own children. So there you go. That is the fictional family that I am feeling.
That was a perfect fictional family for the Papa was a Rolling Stone because you see the date and age of the color purple. That was a
Yeah,
great one because
right.
we're not doing that these days. So good job. It fit the Rolling
Right,
Papa Rolling Stone
right.
era.
That's right, right. Roll on. All right. We want to thank you all for joining us tonight, and we look forward to next week, 7:30 every Thursday. Sean and I are so grateful that you take the time to listen to us each week, and you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Um, Feel free to reach out if you have a topic you would like for us to touch on. Reach out at wifey and baby mama at gmail.com. All right.
Until next
Until next
week.
week.
Love you
Okay.
all. Bye.